Hey, what's up, everyone? We just finished a series last week called Pit Stop, where we got to celebrate Easter together. And this week, we're starting a new series called GPS. So, what is GPS? Where have you ever used GPS? Well, GPS is the Global Positioning System, which is a fancy way of saying it helps you get from point A to point B. So maybe you've used it in a car before or traveling. Is that a GPS, you put in your end destination and where you are, and it road maps how to get to where you're supposed to be going. And so what we're going to be talking about is for 3 weeks, we're going to be looking at 3 different stories about people who had a decision to make. Do they follow the GPS to where they're supposed to go, or do they go another way? And so this week, we are talking about these 2 people right here. So do you know who they are? It is Ruth and Boaz. And so to get to Boaz, we first have to start with Ruth. And so where did Ruth come from? So before we talk about Ruth, we have to talk about someone named Naomi. Now, Naomi, she was a mom and she was married and she had 2 sons, okay? So this is a picture of them. But then, sadly, her husband dies. And then after her husband dies, her 2 sons, they grow up to be older and they have wives. And so here's their wives. One was named Orpah. The other was named Ruth. And so, but then both of the husbands, or Naomi's sons, both of them die. So now it's Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth. And so after the husbands die, and this time, there was no one to take care of women. So if you were widowed or like your husband died or you had no male to take care of you, you had to go to get someone to take care of you. And so they went back to where Naomi was from to find family to be able to take care of them. And so on the journey, they're journeying back. Naomi stops and she stops them. She goes, guys, you don't have to go with me. Where we're going to be going, I can't even have another son for you guys to have a husband. And so you might as well just go back to your hometown and find a husband there for you to marry. And so they were giving them an opportunity, an easy way out, or to go on the hard path, staying with Naomi. So they had a decision to make. And they at first were like, no, we'll stay with you. We'll stay with you. And then Naomi insists, no, really, you should just go find a husband somewhere else. And so Orpah, she decides that she's going to do that. So she goes on to her hometown, but they're crying, they're all together. But this is what it says in Ruth 1:16b through 17. Ruth tells Naomi, wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. Ruth is giving up a lot to stay with Naomi. Ruth was going to move to a new home, new people, a new place, start all over her life. But she felt that she needed to go. And she even said this, your God be my God. So it seems like Ruth saw something in Naomi's God. And so she said, that God, I want to be my God. And so she went with God versus taking the easy way out. She stayed in the direction of God. So she went there. Orpah decided to go her own way. So she went on her own way. And that's a pretty big deal. Have you ever been to someone's house and you were like, wow, these people are just so different. They act completely different. They are so cool. They really love God. Well, that's the same that Ruth saw with Naomi. And so she goes with them. And so Naomi and Ruth continue their journey and got to Bethlehem where Naomi was from. And they needed food. And so they had to come up with an idea how to get food. Because remember, they were going to nothing. And so Ruth comes up with this idea. She says this in Ruth 2:2. Let me go into the harvest fields to pick up the stalks of grain left behind by anyone who is kind enough to let me do it. And so she's like, this is the way that we can do it. And if you think about it, this would be like scraps of food. Maybe you've been eating at a table and then after everyone's done eating, you like wipe the table off and maybe there are some scraps. That would be like what she's doing. She's collecting the leftovers, the remaining stuff. And so once the majority was all picked up from these fields, then Ruth would follow behind and be able to get the rest. And so this was the way that they were going to get food. And so she works really hard. Okay, she's doing this the best she can. And so the owner of the field ends up going to a foreman, someone who kind of oversaw what the people were doing. He said this in Ruth 2:6. And the foreman replied, "She is a young woman from Moab who came back with Naomi. She asked me this morning if she could gather grain behind the harvests. She had been hard at work ever since, except for a few minutes rest in the shelter." So how do people describe you? How do people describe you? They described Ruth as a hard worker. How would people describe you? Do they think that you're a hard worker? Do they think that you're lazy? Do they think you try really hard or maybe don't try at all? Do you share with others or do you keep things for yourself? Do you find the solutions or do you just create problems? How would people describe you? See, because Ruth works really hard and people saw it and they see how you are and how you act. And so in Ephesians 5:15 and 17, it tells us this. So be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but live like those who are wise. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. And we want to be sure that we are living our lives using GPS, God's perfect sight. We want to go in the direction that God is going. And Ruth had this. She had GPS, God's perfect sight. And Ruth wanted to follow God. And that meant that she didn't take the easy way out. There will be times in my life and in your lives where we have to come to a decision. Do we take an easy way out or do we follow God and where he's leading us? Maybe that would be with friends. Do you have to stop being friends with certain people because they lead you to make bad decisions? Or do you follow God? Or do you keep being friends with them? Do you stop being friends with them or do you keep being friends with them? What do you do? What do you do? And so you have to make these decisions. Well, ultimately, God blesses Ruth in big ways and God took care of her. And so Boaz actually ends up marrying Ruth and she had a son. And Ruth's grandson is a guy named David. Maybe David, that you've heard about David before. And we'll learn a lot more about him actually in our next series. But this was all because she didn't take the easy way out. She instead chose to follow God's perfect sight, the GPS. And so the same goes for us. Following God is better than taking the easy way out. And there are promises that we have from God to remind us that he's going to be with us through it all. One's in Isaiah 41, verse 10. Don't be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you up with my victorious right hand. So God is our strength in hard times, and he will be with us like he was with Ruth. And so there will be times where you need to decide. You'll be in the same situation like Ruth. Do I take an easy way out or do I keep following God? And when we follow God through hard times, we get to see God be with us and we get to see how God grows our faith because we get to see him do great things. So following God is better than taking the easy way out. Thanks for joining us. 2 quick announcements. 1, we have the Grace Kid podcast set. A new episode releases every Monday. And we also have camps coming up with SBO and elementary camp. So be sure to sign up and we will see you next week.